stories of fun stuff you guys have done and clients and concerts and whatever the case may be.
Sure.
I
Okay.
don't think I've ever noticed. Nice.
You like my 99X sticker?
There you go.
I used to talk about events on 99X. And
Did you?
Years ago.
I'm sure Keith's here somewhere.
Oh my God! I just saw him at Oyster Fest.
Oh, you were there?
He was like, "Oh, you guys been clients like all the time. You never say hi." I'm like, "Listen, I'm not allowed to go."
Well,
Chad keeps me chained in
I was
the
like,
office.
Key, I'm not coming unless you sneak me backstage and put me in front of a keg. He's like, okay. So I was like, okay, I'm definitely coming. So he put me on the stage with a keg of Michelob Ultra. I'm like, done. Anytime that's happening, I'm there. Those are my only rules. I worked at Live Nation for long enough that I hate concerts. So put me on the stage with a keg, free beer, and I will be there. I don't care how big the beer is. Put fucking Schlitz.
That's what I got to ask. I'm going to a Shamrocking sponsor event tonight. So I got to find out see if they got any fun stuff for us this year at Shamrocking.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's the season for St. Patrick's Day festivities.
Well, that one's a great one. I mean, it's cystic fibrosis. I think this is like year 11 or 12, but they're moving it. It's not in Ameris this year.
Oh, really? Where is
they're moving it up to Union Hill Park, so where they do the Home After Dark or whatever.
Yeah, because Live Nation's prices are going probably too high. And they can't fuck with them because they're not making money on the concerts anymore, so they got to find a way to bleed the fun out of the music industry.
Yeah.
I can say that. I worked there for 3 years.
You're allowed to say whatever you want.
Yeah.
All right. So we're recording it, so nothing crazy. You have a 12 minute, a 23 minute, and a 9 minute.
Okay.
It's going to go much faster than you think it is once we get rolling.
Okay.
And then use this as a loose guide, but anything you guys want to talk about, we can segue in and out of.
Cool. All right.
Got water here.
Flounder, you need a check? Are we good? You got Flounder for president? All right.
Good.
Check.
You.
Hey.
All right, let's rock and roll.
Good?
Good to go.
Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job and Nick Constantino here live from the Battery. And you picked a doozy.
Yeah.
You know my hot buttons.
Well, look, we did a PR episode. I thought it went great, but we did a PR episode, and we just needed to do a second one.
Yeah.
And before we get into it, Trip, tell us your disdain towards PR and why it exists.
It's 30 years in the business, and I have seen, I don't even know the ratio, more bad PR firms than good PR firms. And so it's just one of those when you're managing a budget and you're looking at how to grow my business. Good PR is effective, but I've just gone through, and it's probably every time I've moved into a role, it's probably been the first area that I evaluate who we're dealing with and what's the value to the business. And like I said, historically, I've just run across more bad than good.
So I'm going to go the other way, and I'm going to defend PR, and I'm going to criticize you as the person that's hiring PR. And in my experience, it's actually the opposite. The people hiring PR have the wrong intentions and assumptions of what they're supposed to do, and all they want them to do is go find free marketing. And that is not a PR firm's job, because once you do that, the marketing people and the people in the media industry that know that will never work with you as PR again. So I think in most cases, most of the PR people I was dealing with were being set up to fail. So
I agree.
Which side of it, I don't know the answer. So now that we've thrown that out there, let's introduce Karen West PR and Chad Shear and Karen West, who can go defend themselves and tell us how awesome they are. Guys, how you doing?
Really well. Thank you so much for having us.
All right, so let's start with the easy stuff. Let's establish who you guys are, how you got started, some of the different clients, the diversity of what you guys do, because that'll set us up really nice to either bash or talk about how awesome PR is.
I'm going to let Chad take this one. I'm going to put him on the spot since this was his idea.
We are a lifestyle and entertainment PR company. I'm really kind of curious. We can talk off air on who the previous guest was. I would categorize us as hyper aggressive. We do work hand in hand with marketing. I don't think that one can go without the other. But you're right. Those lines kind of cross, the streams cross, and people get a little anxious on who should be doing what. As far as what we do stuff, what I loosely tell my mom is if you go out and have fun doing it, there's a good chance we represent it. From the beer you crack to the meal you have, the music festivals, art on the wall, even clothing, and brands. We do just about all of it.
Well, Chad, I think you hit a key point, and it goes back to, I agree with Nick's comment about they're set up to fail, is in my roles, which were essentially head of marketing and have everything underneath it, I would often come in and see where PR was almost treated as its own. It wasn't brought into a lot of the discussions with the other agencies we were looking at and things we were doing. And to your point of you work a lot and you cross those bounds, that is where you can be set up to succeed. And I think that's the problem, is sometimes PR is, unfortunately, and that may be the client, almost treats them separately. And I think that's the problem.
I think that's a really good point, and we see that a lot with us and really with any PR firm. It's a symbiotic relationship that you're going into with the client, and I think a lot of people hire a PR firm thinking that they're going to save the day, or they're just going to make magic happen. All of a sudden you're going to be on the cover of GQ, and it really is a lot of work. You're in it together, and you do have to merge all those different departments, no matter what size business, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to social media, when it comes to your public presence, when speaking skills, writing, all of these things are important aspects.
And I think, let's take one thing of each you said, because it is a form of marketing. Let's be clear. Advertising is a form of marketing. PR is a form of marketing. People confuse these words all the time.
Absolutely.
Even to an extent, HR is marketing because you're marketing internally. So let's classify that. So PR is a form of marketing. Now, Chad, one thing you said about entertainment, okay? That is an insanely crowded space right now, okay? In the past 10 years, just the evolution of the entertainment space and how it crosses over with athletics when you have these Topgolfs, all these spaces, the amount of concert venues, the amount of places that you are in right now makes it incredibly hard. I know there are spots, there's your Thrill List and people that cover these spaces, but I mean, you look, it's 40 deep every time you open it, and once you get past the first 3, no one's paying attention anyway. So a lot of principles are the same. You mentioned the relationship with the clients. One of the things that is similar to marketing, to do good marketing, you need real rapport with your clients. And most of these people start relationships so standoffish that you can't build rapport. You can't put them on GQ if you don't know what it is about them. What if they are really a huge feminist? Then you shouldn't be on GQ. If you're you don't know enough about this. So I think problems that PR and marketing have when you look at it are very similar. How are we putting this person in the best light? As a marketer, you need rapport to find out, because one of my biggest problems is that I don't find out someone's real problems till 2 years in.
Right.
Like, you need to develop a relationship with 2 years before they let the guard down and be like, dude, I really need help with this, right? You're not getting that on day one. So to set the stage, the problems we all deal with are similar. Now, unfortunately, PR people and marketing people are self-conscious. They want to cover their own asses. They want to cover themselves, and they don't think of how we can work as a team, which is something Tripp and I talk about all the time. That's what's broken about marketing. Every company needs 64 agencies who, instead of working in the client's best interest, are working in their own best interest, which never helps anybody. So now that the stage is set, talk about how you guys try to be different. Talk about what makes you stand out in such a crowded marketplace. Chad's smirking over there. So you either got something or I plead the fifth.
Well, I mean, I think one, we are very different. We are in that lifestyle and entertainment space, which everybody thinks is sexy and exciting and great, but it honestly is a lot of work, and it's exhausting. And we love it, but it really is a lifestyle. And so we're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we aren't yes people. So we really go in, and if the client isn't the right fit for us, we're not going to work with them. I mean, sometimes you don't know, as you said, until you're 2 years in or whatever it may be. But we really establish goals, much like everybody else. But it's having these really frank conversations about what can we do to achieve these goals, and also what's the reality of the market. I think that we're hyper aggressive. Like I said, we're not no people, and we really, are exhaustive in everything we do. And we also understand, as PR people, we are the people who are putting out fires. We are therapists at times. We are event planners at times. We are working at the marketing, with the marketing teams. And often we're like project managers over everybody, or having those honest conversations with the business and saying, for example, a restaurant, well, this isn't working because you need to work on your internal team. Like, we can't fix what's going on. So,
I think with lifestyle and entertainment, be curious your take on this too, is because so much of that is it's around people, it's around egos at times, and it's a little more esoteric, and there's not this hard line of, you have a product that's failing, all right, it's a car recall or something like that, and then people think about, how do I deal with that? That's black and white.
Right.
Curious, that view of the entertainment and lifestyle, because you're dealing with perceptions of what the product, the service, the company is.
I think that there can be a lot of miscommunication across the board, and once again, you're dealing with a lot of egos. And so we deal with a lot of global brands and luxury brands who also are trying to crack the Atlanta nut. And so they think that they're one way, they think the Atlanta is another way, like, this is easy, we're going to go in, and it's just, unfortunately, not the case.
Yeah, and to be fair, Atlanta is so I've lived in a lot of the country. I've lived out west. I've lived in D.C., New York. Atlanta is a tough nut, and I'll tell you why I know that. When Shake Shack opened here, they assumed it would be like Central Park in New York, where there'd be lines at the door. There wasn't a person that walked into that place, and everywhere else they opened, it was untouchable. But they let people like, I don't want this New York stuff here. Wait, what do you get out of my face? I got better things to do with my time. Don't tell me.
Right.
And I think it timed itself well with the rise of Atlanta and pop culture. You're at the center of sports now, pop culture, politics. Atlanta is getting its own. It doesn't have it yet, and this is a conversation we have in the show often. It's not there yet. No one can say what Atlanta is known for, but it's getting it, and that ego comes from it. But at the same time, everybody wants to be here. Every company, everyone wants to be here, and decisions made from New York do not have as much impact here as people think they do. And I have that fight almost daily. We had one today with PNC Bank out of Pittsburgh. I'm like, guys, you're in Pittsburgh. I can't imagine a place further away and different than Atlanta. So, like, what are you doing to localize? And then once you challenge back, like, you know what, you're right. We do have a guy there that probably is the guy to talk to. But I'm just saying that I have to imagine that it's a really hard thing. I also, entertainment is hard for a couple of reasons, right? Between radio stations, sports, music, you always have to have a beer in your hand. You always have to have a smile on your face because you can't be that buzzkill that's bringing down everybody else's fun time, which is so exhausting. Everyone's like, oh my God, what do you mean? You have a suite every night. You're brave. You get floor seats. It's awesome. I go, yeah, it's awesome. 20% of the time, the other 80% of the time, I'm working. And this is a shtick you got to put on. So, I think that's an important thing for you guys also. How do you differentiate the fun from the work? Because the lines are so blurred.
You keep blurring those lines.
I think it's definitely a game. I think it's, we have to juggle it, but I think we are, by nature, very authentic people. Both Chad and I have a media background, so we've been on the other side as far as radio magazines and things like that. And when we started this company, I had worked at other PR firms. I had another PR firm, and we just wanted to do something a little bit differently. And that's have honest conversations. And we are unapologetic in who we are. Atlanta has a wonderful PR and marketing space. There are incredible companies here, boutique agencies. I mean, people who are really smart. But we wanted to do something a little bit different, and that's based off of our personality, how we operate, and that, we are hustlers, we are working all the time, and we expect the same from our clients. And also building relationships is the core of everything, and we truly believe in that.
So what would surprise most businesses that when you say you're unapologetic, what do you tell them that they're not used to hearing?
No, a lot. And I mean, Chad can attest for this. And I mean, people don't want to hear it. They still want to hear their way, and or they want to, and we hands down have said, this is not going to work. If you're going to do it,
you're not paying me to do things the way you want to. Plug me in. I ironically find that most people that I deal with in the South. Now, I'm a blatant Yankee, right? I was born in Queens, like blatant. They don't like you at first, and then about 2 days in, they're like, oh my God, this is so much easier. We don't have to passively aggressively dance around each other, and we can just have a real conversation. And then the ones that you get along with, you have lifelong friendships. And the ones you don't, no offense, they really don't want. They just want someone to bounce yeses off, and that probably means the business is going to fail. Or they got mommy, daddy, and money, and they don't care anyway. So that's how I see it. That's how I've seen it.
No, I mean, I think that's the nail on the head. And, Chad's from New York. I'm from Maryland. I've been in Atlanta since 1997, certainly consider it my home. But it's one of those things that I don't, as somebody who lives in Atlanta, and we do local, regional, national campaigns, please don't come into my city and tell me what I like. Or please don't, if you have a problem and you hired an expert for a reason, listen to that expert. Listen to that expert.
I like to say the word major market, right? Like, do not come into one of these top 7 or 8 cities in this country and tell us how you do it somewhere else, right? Just like they learn, you can't go to New York and you can't go to LA and say what the other one is doing. It just doesn't work.
I think that's going to be a great segue into the next segment. And I think there's some real nuggets there. So when we come back from the break, we'll dive in a little bit more, and we'll dive into maybe some other common perceptions and misperceptions of PR. So you're listening to the Marketing Madmen on Xtra 106.3. We'll be right back.
See, it goes faster than you think.
It does. I grew up in Annapolis and then lived right outside of Baltimore.
I went to University of Maryland.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
awesome.
I was in College Park. So I lived in D.C. for 15 years of my life, so I've been to Annapolis many times.
I mean, Maryland is like this big, right?
Yeah, but it's fucking an hour and a half to get there somehow from
I
DC
know.
every time, even though it's like 25 miles down the road. Those stupid bridges. It's like getting to Ocean City or Dewey Beach. It's like, how is this 6 hours, guys?
You're like 30 hours later.
I've had people do it. They've ridden a bike to get there faster than renting a car. All right, so let's open, because we didn't actually talk about some of the clients. So let's make sure we hammer the credibility. Let's rattle off some of the clients you guys work with. and then we'll use that to segue. Okay, now that we've established the credibility, let's talk about what businesses still get wrong about PR, and let's get into the nitty gritty to actually help people about PR.
Okay.
Who are you gonna
Ready, Fiona? Okay.
Rival Entertainment, I think, would be a good one. I think we do long-standing Tio Luchos with James Beard.
Do a couple of big ones, a couple of medium ones, and a couple of small ones. Say we've seen it all, that kind of thing. That's the way. Yep.
Okay.
Let's roll.
Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job and Nick Constantino here with Chad Shearer and Karen West of Karen West PR. And, we were talking right before the break about, don't come into my market, right? And act like you know what's best for my market. And we've seen a lot of that. And, we talked about some of the markets you're in, but how does that work out with your clients? Maybe give us some examples of how your local presence and understanding Atlanta, how that's manifested itself in your portfolio of clients.
I think with us, it was the market actually makes all the difference, because when coming in, our company now is coming up on 20 years. When we were here, there was little to nothing happening. All right, but you have companies like our client Rival Entertainment that just did Oyster Festival and did Highball Festival, and is going actually to Dallas with One Music Festival as well. Ticket Alternative, who's now evolved into a different platform. All these other companies that were really small in no other platform in no other city would you have been able to grow up to now have them the king of empires. Rival Entertainment brought the Foo Fighters back, and and Rolling Stone to Georgia Tech and all that. And if you were in New York City, Chicago, LA, you might not have had that opportunity because you're playing in a much bigger pond. Here, we're developing with this pond and making it into a national rival. So when companies like Putt Shack or Flight Club that are two of our clients come in, and those are national, if not global brands, we're able to be part of that conversation. Other good clients that we have and we've watched is Wild Heaven beer.
We had Eric on. It was awesome.
He's
Eric
great.
was on it, and at the time when they were first starting on, it was just like Sweetwater, Terrapin, and now there's like almost too many.
Well, we know there are too many because they're closing right and left. So the market also said that there are too many. And so it sounds like you guys have a good national, regional, and local portfolio.
Yes.
So round that out. Talk a little bit about the regional ones and then some more of the local ones. Just give that idea, because understanding the different phases and cycles of business is really important here, right? You mentioned all these alternatives really to someone like Live Nation. Well, Live Nation has gotten so big and such the behemoth that when you go to Coachella, you're charging $30 for a hot dog now. That's why other alternatives come about, because it's gotten too expensive, which created an opportunity for some of these other festivals that are really local and really $10 to get in, and it's a community feel. You lost all that. So that's why they're coming up right now. Talk about some other clients, round out that kind of regional and the local feel.
Yeah, well, within Atlanta, we do a lot of work within the restaurant space, of course, because Atlanta is such a culinary community and food space right now with Michelin and everything else going on. We have a relatively new client, Tio Luchos, which is Peruvian inspired, and Chef Arnaldo Castillo is amazing. He was just nominated for James Beard semifinalist.
And for the record, Lima has made its way. It's on the top 50 in the world list like 3 different times. 5 years ago, people didn't even know where Lima was. It is the culinary capital of South America and probably one of the most influential in the world right now.
Which is really very
I'm not a foodie
exciting.
or anything. Someone told me. Someone told me.
I love it. But additionally, we also have worked with brands like as global as Gucci, but doing hyper-local campaigns within our market, or we've done charity work like at Jeffrey Fashion Cares, which is no longer here. But we've worked with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra.
Cool. And Gucci is a great example. I can't imagine Gucci in Italy and Gucci in Atlanta to be doing the same thing.
Correct.
My goodness gracious. Could you imagine in Milan and in Atlanta doing the same thing? I've been to Milan. It is the stuffiest, just whitest place that there is on earth. And imagine what Atlanta's version of Gucci is. You need to go local. And, cheers to them for figuring that out, because you don't get much bigger egos in the world than Gucci. And for them to figure out to go local, that's a testament to doing business the right way, I would say.
Yeah, it was a wonderful account. And in the fashion space, we see a lot of that. Like we worked with Fry for a very long long time. And but once again, we work with really cool legacy brands or restaurants like Dantana's, which obviously for sports, everybody knows that.
I mean, Dantana's had a sandwich named after our owners, the Dickey wrap. It was. I mean, that's really local.
Right.
They're naming a sandwich after a family member. That's pretty local.
And they've been around for 20 years, and so all of a sudden we're going to a space where there's new restaurants opening and closing on the daily, and they just celebrated their 20th. So we love to be a part of that journey too and sustain that conversation.
I think that's a tough market. Obviously, I mean, we've seen a lot of that. I'm up in Alpharetta, and you just see the turn and the churn going on right now. So maybe just a minute. How do you think about that? How if you're a restaurant owner right now, how should you be thinking about PR?
I think it's it's a lot. So a lot of people, like I said, will come to us and they just think that it's an easy fix, it's an easy job, or we're hired in conjunction with the grand opening. Something that we really specialize in is reinvigoration campaigns. And there's, like I said, it's a great market, but we often have to go in and fix what was done in conjunction with the grand opening when you were talking about bad PR. So they really need to think about a partner who, one, hopefully really truly embraces and is passionate about the brand, but is going to work with them in all aspects and work with a marketing team, or if it is a smaller brand, messaging. What does the social media platform look like? Do you have strategy around that? What's happening with the grand opening? What's happening now? Or is it a brand that's been around like Dantana's for 20 years? How do we keep that top of mind? So I think it's making sure that you do your homework. What can you do on your own? What excites you? What are you doing with your brand that's going to stand apart? Or what message do you want to say or get out there? And then additionally, who's your demographic, or what demographics do you want to bring in?
I think this is where the honesty comes in, right? As 20 years ago, opening a restaurant was nowhere near as convoluted and crazy as it is right now. The rent, the construction, the build out, the permits. By the time all that is set up, you just want to open. Let me tell you, the biggest flaw you can make is opening. A soft opening, figure it out first, have friends and family. These things don't happen anymore. Like they want to open so fast. They don't want to, and this is all part of marketing, right? Come in, do a 50% off week for the first week, because no one's going to be pissed off when they got their food for 50% off.
Right.
Like there are ways to do this, but they don't go about that. So they go to grand opening, everything goes wrong. You only have one shot at a first chance. So unfortunately, I think the climate of business, and that's what I want to bring up. You guys have been doing this for 20 years. That's your advantage over somebody that's coming in brand new, because those business cycles always repeat themselves, right?
Absolutely.
We're coming off the back of a very prosperous time for everybody, right? But everybody wanted to get in on that prosper, so they made their plan, say, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Well, now all of a sudden, not everyone's eating out. Now all of a sudden, no one wants to buy $65 steaks. So that planning all of a sudden goes to crap, and you're sitting there like, hey, let's have a real conversation about what's happening. So,
and I think that's one of the use cases. I think we all get the use case of, hey, I'm going to, new entrant, new location, whatever, but what I'm hearing is, and I've seen it a lot recently, is I'm 3 to 6 months in and it's not going the way I thought. Right, that sounds like that's a use case of maybe reach out.
Oh, that's funny. You know what I hear? Hey, it's 3 months in and every other partner has failed in the world. It can't be my fault. It's my marketing is wrong. It's the parking people is wrong. The cops shut me down. The county's to blame, as opposed to, wow, maybe I didn't really think this whole thing out the right way I was supposed to. That's what I hear.
Yeah, but that's what my point is. 3 to 6 months in, and if it's not going the way you thought, it's time to have an honest assessment.
Correct.
Right now, not everyone's willing to do that, but if you're an owner out there and you're going through that. That sounds like the time to potentially call. It
is. I mean, I think it's a really important time. Ideally, we would love to be there from the beginning, but like I said, I mean, all too often our firm is called in, and that can be 3 to 6 months later. It can be a year later. Often it's 3 years later where they're like,
which it's a little too late, and that's why I'm saying 3 to 6 months, because I'm living it. Honestly, you get past a year, and then unless you got deep pockets,
dude. Let's be honest. The problem, everyone opens the same restaurant, right? In Atlanta, especially. I mean, my goodness, there was a Neapolitan, one pizza, and then all of a sudden there were 44 of them. There was one Robin shop, and there were 44 of them, and there's no differentiation whatsoever. They're just opening because they think that they have to open it. So that's a problem. That again, PR is not solving that problem. It's are you the best? Out of the 25 that are open, do you run the best back of house? Do you run the best front of house? Again, we talk about fundamentals all the time. PR is not changing those fundamentals. If people come and you botch it because your service is late or something goes wrong, you're not blaming PR. That seems to be what ends up happening.
One critical component, too, though, is that what's happening in the media landscape. And that's really where we come in as far as our expertise, because it's constantly changing. We're working with skeleton staffs, but we're also competing, especially with any new opening, against media who want to scoop the story. And so it's like they're looking at permitting, they're looking at stuff. And we just had an example of this with DBA Barbecue that's been around for 15 years. Well, he's shifting his model, and he's like, listen, during the pandemic, I saw like drive-throughs working, all of these things. So he still has he's about to open another location. He's
Highlands,
like,
I've been there
right.
all the time.
He's like, I'm going to close, but we're not shuttering, whatever. It's just time. Like that's moving on. So we had to come in and really get that message across. But we have people who are like, I heard a rumor from, so-and-so that this is going to close. And all of a sudden we're managing that. And so that's also an important job, because we have to have those conversations where sometimes it's like, listen, please don't release this news. Like, let us tell the staff, like, we have a plan in place. We want you to be a part of this conversation. And so that's a whole nother nightmare that has turned my head gray.
You brought up a good point. So in my assumption, and please tell me if I'm wrong, is if you wait until the point where you're in crisis to hire PR, not only are you too late, but it's going to cost a buttload more money to do this the right way. It happens in marketing too, right? If you're not brand marketing to build your brand, when you really need that push, how much is it going to cost to really market? But talk a little bit about that, because what we're talking about is crisis mode. And I know you guys specialize in it, but define crisis mode and define how maybe you wouldn't be in crisis in the first place if you started doing these things a little earlier.
It would be a very unique opportunity for us to sign someone on that's already in crisis mode. We've had, I won't name them, a client call us up that there was 2 days before, or not a client, but a prospective, a shooting. Well, I can't. I'm not going to. I can, but I'm not going to come in.
And that's not even saying it's your fault. There's a shooting. I mean, there was a shooting at the racetrack down by Georgia State. That, like, no one has anything to do with it. They're shutting it, closing their hands, and walking out of it. That's not the answer either. But I understand what you're saying.
What we want to be
you're too late.
We want to have controlled the narrative with you for a certain amount of time, so that if there is a crisis situation, we are there we know exactly what you need, what to do. We already know the positives. You can't call me up as I'm working on the car flying down the highway, so to speak.
You're very much a strategic firm, and that's awesome. But there's so many firms that are just that reaction crisis management type firm.
Well, and it's also going in and coming in from a consumer's perspective, right? So, for example, we have we're working with Flight Club, which is great. Obviously the entertainment space is right. So like tech tracking darts, all this stuff, super fun. The place is beautiful, but something that was very simple was they didn't have signage. You couldn't see it from the street, and so it's once again talking about
which costs nothing.
Which costs it's a huge brand, and then they have an amazing department, and they're like, oh my God, we get it, right? And so they put up this huge sign, and all of a sudden everybody's like, Flight Club, oh my God, it's open, and it's exciting. But even having those minute conversations, being like, okay, let's look at signage, let's look at what's working, let's talk what's happening a year later, and what type of people were you getting in? What was your media strategy out of the gates? Let's go in and let's figure out what we can do in order to take it to the next level or get the right people in the door.
But again, it would be better if those things were done from the beginning. Before you open, that those things were in place. I mean, if I was Flight Club, I'd put my sign up 2 months beforehand to buzz up demand, and the worst thing that happens, people call you and there's an answering machine. We're not open yet, but check back here.
Right.
I mean, again, it's not rocket science, but by the same time, a business owner going through all of this, it is hell on earth. And I've seen Atlanta. I mean, we were dealing. I mean, I think it was Painted Pickle. We talked to those guys last February, and he's like, we're gonna open in July. I go, okay. How about January if you're lucky? It won't even be March till they open. Well, out of their control completely, but goodness gracious.
Like permitting, the city, all of those things. I mean, it is really, really tough on business owners in Atlanta, unfortunately.
Everybody's got their hands out. Doesn't matter if it's the radio guy, everyone's got a sales guy, the government, the permit office, everybody's got a sales guy.
You get, the fire department, you name it. I mean, the stories I've heard, it's ridiculous.
But
it's
again,
insane,
no offense, but this is where I'm not going to say PR should be saying where to spend illicit money, but I'm saying maybe this is the priority of what, if you're going to have some money to spend, this is where I would spend it.
Yes.
No, that's not important right now. That part is not important. This is where to spend it. These are the people that you need to have the conversations with. These are the relationships in which you need to have. Coming out of market, starting a new business, either you're coming in with a couple of $10,000 to pay people off, or you have the relationships. You can't just start business. Anyone that thinks that that's the case is oblivious to how the world works.
Yeah.
So, that's obviously the crisis piece is one, I would say, misperception. What are some other ones that you come across as far as misperceptions of PR?
You're looking at me?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, people just don't understand what PR is, right? And on a simple term, I mean, we're managing public perception, right? It's public relations. And so what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, that goes with online, that goes with everything. Or like you said, coming in and being like, well, what kind of stunt are you going to do? Like, where's the advertising campaign and all of these things? And we're like, whoa.
And that was never crowdsourced. That is Yelp was the one that crowdsourced all of this. And I have good friends that were top 4 or 5 employees in that company, and they did more bad than they did good, in my personal opinion. And the pay model and it screwed everything up. But at its core, I still really appreciate it, because if I'm in a brand new city and I need to find out where to eat, I do a location near me, and I find a place, and it's the best directory that exists. But it's crowdsourced now, so every person on earth has an opinion, and these algorithms are amplifying the worst opinions of the people who have no credibility to be saying it. So that job that used to be a couple of critics, and you had the New York Times food critic, and that carried weight. Now, John down the street goes to 44 restaurants and think he deserves a free milkshake everywhere he goes, and will destroy people because of it. And that's not just Yelp and restaurants. It's every review. People think that they have power, and the problem is the people that are wielding that power are the worst customers.
They're
and then
the
the
worst.
people that are the best customers have better things to do with their freaking time than put reviews for people, so it doesn't balance out.
And I think people also don't realize, and it's beautiful in a sense, like you say, because everybody can contribute to the story, but they don't realize how devastating 1-star review can be, because they didn't realize a restaurant was Italian.
Yeah.
Like, what? Okay, that's on you, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, so all of these conversations.
It's being weaponized.
It's being weaponized.
Across the board, it's being weaponized. And I think what you said about, these media companies that are looking to exploit these things for view, it's all being weaponized.
Yeah.
But what I do believe is that the easiest way to go against that is to be authentic and to be good at what you do, because at its core, people are forgiving, right? If you come in and it is a bad experience, I'm telling you right now, you call the manager over and you explain why it was a bad experience. You don't need to be rude. You don't need to ask for anything for free, but you give, and 9 out of 10 times a good restaurant will do one of 2 things. 1, they will fix it right there, or 2, they will ask you back and say, we're having an off night, on my dime, please come back and we're going to take care of it. But then the problem
100%.
is people find out that they're doing that, and then every ass is trying to take advantage of it.
1,000%.
So, and then what do you think happens? It drives the costs up, and then people complain about the freaking costs of it all. So anyway, not to distract you guys from the hard work that you have. I hope it's setting up just how hard the world is, and we've made it on ourselves in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once again, I think it's an exhaustive job, but we personally, and just I'm speaking for Chad as well, but I really enjoy being able to contribute to people's success. And we've had a really lucky career, and we've done really cool things from these major festivals, and we've kind of seen it all to a certain degree. And we want to take that expertise and we want to put it to good use, and we always say that we rise by lifting others, and that's what we're here to do. And sometimes it is those hard conversations, and sometimes it is, just being an ear for somebody to listen to and being like, am I making this right business decision? And then us also having to bring it back around and being like, well, this is how PR can play into it, and let's figure out how to make this a success. And we really, I think, finding the right PR partner is really crucial. It's like dating, it's a relationship. You have to be in this together. And I think that also something that we see is that if I'm going to hire a big firm, then they're going to do it for me. I'm going to get this great press, and that's not the case. Often the boutique firms or boutique firms like ours are the people who are really going to be in it with you. And sometimes there is a place for these huge firms, but also finding maybe the right account manager and people who can tell your story, that believe in your brand and have those connections. So it really is important to do your research and have open conversations.
Again, that's that authenticity. If you're not authentic in who you represent, it shines through.
It does.
And again, you might be able to get when you're grand opening in all the trades, right? But keeping a restaurant open for 1.5 years is not hard work. Keeping it open for 5 years is almost impossible. Like probably 60-70% close rate. So what is the vision of the 5 years, and how do we fit into that? That's probably not an easy conversation, because people, all they can think about is 2 weeks ahead.
Right. And it's interesting. We had a meeting yesterday with a prospective client, and just talking about that, and they're very focused on the immediate and what's happening. I was like, listen, I'm going to keep bringing this back around, because we really have to talk about, what do you want? This is like, what do you want 6 months down the road? What do you want a year? We're setting you up for that. So let's kind of pull our focus back to that, and we're going to keep bringing you back around, because those conversations are so important. And also finding a team, and whether it is with marketing, advertising, internally, that can pivot with you and is open to change. I mean, we all know that things are changing by the minute. It's hard to keep up with everything. And everybody's on social media and being like, oh, let me sell you this. You can do it on your own. You can do whatever. And there's so much information coming towards us. I think it's really hard sometimes to separate ourselves from that as far as being an expert. But there are people who are also open to willing, I'm always happy to talk to somebody and be like, listen, I'll have a frank conversation. You don't need PR. Or holy moly, you need help. We may not be it.
And the type of PR, and I think back to the authenticity, and I've said this before, one of the early lessons at a conference I was at, I was sharing the dais with someone else, and they explained the 4 butts of PR. And to me, that was just classic. I've always remembered it. And it's 2 are defensive and 2 are offensive. The defensive are cover your butt, going back to crisis.
Right.
Kiss butt, trying to make it go away. Then you get to offensive. It's kick butt. And then the ultimate is no ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like that, if you're thinking about it strategically and authentically, I'm guessing you're going to align yourself with one or two of those strategies for your clients and not the other two.
That's probably a reason why I'm driving a Volvo and not a Ferrari, and I don't apply to the kiss butt part of it. But the other ones definitely do play into everything that we do. I mean, we have to be aggressive, but sometimes it is being nice and shaking hands and kissing babies and whatnot.
And we're also working in a very fast world, right? People want immediate answers. Everybody's a journalist. Everybody has their phones. And so, we're dealing with a lot of different angles. Everybody's a media person. Everybody's, a journalist. Everybody's a PR person. Everybody is a photographer. It can be so much. And I think sometimes having, a strong PR partner can really also keep you focused or keep the client focused in perspective, because they want to do everything. And going back to, let's talk about good service. Let's talk about, what you're giving. What are your products? What are your offerings? What makes you special? What makes you stand out?
Yeah.
And really focusing on the business at hand, and also bringing them back to that, as opposed to comparing themselves. Well, I saw this restaurant on, TikTok, and they got a bazillion.
I think a great example of that is the trend to shrink menus. And the reason that they're doing that is you can control your food budget better. Like, this is a PR thing. You're doing this because you're all over the place, man. You can't have a Mongolian barbecue as an appetizer and then an Italian pasta dish on the same menu. Like, let's hone this. One of the things I think is incredibly hard, and I say this from a marketing standpoint, from promoting the show, all this stuff, the days of just being a good chef don't matter anymore. Right? The days of, you could have the best video on earth. If you're not playing YouTube's games and playing the SEO games, nobody cares. If you're not putting out those days, like, radio is one of the last mediums that you just put it on the air and people listen.
Right.
Like, those days are over. You can be the best chef in the world, make the best chicken parmesan on earth, but if people don't know about it and you're not playing the game and making sure Google gets their cut and then Facebook has their ads, if you're not playing that game, you don't have the success that you used to have if you just opened a good spot 10, even 5 years ago.
I think we've put complexity in everything, and I'm going to take it back to sports since we're sitting here in the Battery.
Just more money. Just pay more money and it's all fixed.
But I grew up with the Redskins. We talk about being in Baltimore and D.C., and you're back in the days with John Riggins, they ran one play over and over and over again, and that's how you won in the league now. Now you got motion, you got different formations, you got all these things. To your point, it's the same thing in business right now. You can't just execute on that one key play. You have to have all these other things, and the same thing with marketing, PR, and all.
So I agree with you, but you have to have 64 trainers. You have to have X-ray people, physicians. You have to build a huge complex. Everything costs. And this is capitalism. Everything costs more money. So what used to be great, do a great community restaurant, and people will come because there's nowhere else to go, is now feed the machine, feed the machine, feed the machine. And then, ironically, if you feed the machine right, it usually grows perpetually, but it cannot make the job easy. To one, keep your head wrapped around all of that. To two, differentiate what's BS and what's not. And then to three, convince the chef, who's the best chef in the world, that you being a chef is not enough anymore. I can't imagine that to be an easy conversation.
It's not an easy conversation. And just to kind of touch on, you're talking about money and everything else. When it comes to PR, we tend to charge a lot less than, traditional advertising and campaigns and all of these things. And you guys will see it. I mean, earned media, when it comes to that best chef and telling a story about, somebody like Chef Castillo, who is from Peru but then lived in the South, and here's his story, and we're telling it, often goes really far, coupled with everything else that's going on. Right, if he has a real story. And so I think that's where we can really benefit as far as PR is concerned, and that being able to, like you said, it's not easy, but we wrap our minds around all of those things and say, okay, we're gonna be on retainer or whatever it may be, but here are the things that we can do reasonably, and let's see how it can make a difference.
I love the ideas of stories. When we come back from the break, we're going to dive into that and have a little bit of fun. You're listening to the Marketing Mad Men on Xtra 106.3. We'll be right back.
Redskins fan.
What did I say in the elevator?
Redskins fan?
Oh, that was before Snyder. I have not been. I've been a Packer fan for
I grew up as
30 years.
I grew up a Giants
You're
fan.
Giants?
So that's why I hate the Redskins. But
I was Redskins, of course, when growing up. But then
when Snyder took over, within about 2 or 3 years, I totally disassociated.
Got it. He's turned me into a Bills fan, which is just so upsetting. I just can't anymore. I'm just out of the game. It's too heartbreaking.
Well, they get you right to the end.
Right. And Falcons too. I'm like, come on.
That's why I'm a Packer fan. I mean, it's been, it's been great. It's been easy and get to, bash the Cowboys still.
I mean, the Cowboys, I can't even.
That's the only thing that gives me hope as a Giants fan. I'm like, well, it's not the fucking Cowboys.
Right.
Or the Redskins. Or the Redskins. I mean, the Eagles, too. Holy shit. But anyway. All right, so let's...
Tell some fun stories.
So I think, I'd like to do stories, but here's the thing. I think it'd be more important to talk to the audience and say, what is your advice for somebody? At what size of your business do you need PR? Where do you go get a firm versus a person? As good as stories are, we covered a lot. This is very dense. So let's take a step back and let's say, all right, so let's talk to a company, $5 million company, whatever the space is, but they're just getting their feet wet. They don't think PR, they're getting to the point where they probably need PR. What's the advice for them? Do they go in-house PR agent? Do they go out-house? Do they go size? Why boutique? Let's give it a little more informational, because then we could put this segment out by itself and put out hey, and if you're thinking of being a PR, listen to some experts on when it's time. And I think it's just a little bit more powerful than telling goofy stories that we can smoke a joint and tell some fun stories.
When's it time, Karen?
I don't know. What do you think?
And every scenario is going to be different.
Yeah,
but
right.
Well, let's weave through it. And the answer is you don't know. When would you know? Maybe there's not a time, but maybe there's a moment you wake up and be like, oh my God, it's time.
Yeah.
I think let's do this as a resource towards businesses that are listening, that are trying to figure this out. Or or even people that want to get into PR. What's your advice to somebody who wants to get into the agency? Let's make this
go into accounting. No, I'm just kidding.
The accountants are saying going to PR. The accountants are saying going into PR.
Yeah, right.
All right, you ready, Flounder? We're good? All right. Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job and Nick Constantino here with Corinne West and talking about PR.
Start over. He said Corinne. I don't know where the hell Corinne came from.
It's because the C throws people off.
He said Corinne.
Yeah, I'm fancy now.
And she shops at Target.
Yeah.
Well, there's the stories again. So, all right. Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job and Nick Constantino here with Chad Shearer and Karen West from Karen West PR. And, we were talking, you gave some great examples as we kind of went to the break.
She gave some great examples, and we also scared the crap out of anyone that wants to go into PR.
Right.
So that definitely happened. So
that's for certain. But then there's people who were trying to figure out, do they need PR?
Yeah.
So why don't we turn that around? So, we're obviously talking about restaurants, we're talking about entertainment brands and all that. There's a lot of entrepreneurs, small businesses here. Let's do let's do size, let's do challenges. How do you think about it? When should someone be thinking about reaching out?
Do they want to go get a in-house person versus an agent? What's the difference? What's the advice to people who are trying to figure out whether they need dedicated PR and how to go about it? What advice would you give to people?
It depends on the size of the company. If it's a lot of the hungry entrepreneur type style companies, I would definitely think that you'd be wasting your resources trying to get somebody internally. I would maybe get a day-to-day marketing person internally that can work and, hey, we're coming up with these promotions. You also want to, I think, you pick up the phone when you think you have a story to tell. Yeah. The worst thing, we partnered with a company and they had a PR company for a year. And when we showed up to the first day, the building wasn't even built out. And I have no idea what the PR company was doing for that year.
Billing them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's one thing that we would not do. Karen West PR maintains our high level of integrity. But, but internal teams when we work with Gucci and all that, you definitely want to have someone out of New York that's kind of helping to guide it. And in turn, we're guiding them on a local level here in Atlanta and telling them, okay, that's not going to fly, or this is going to fly, and here's how to optimize it, and tap into our resources and our Rolodex. People don't really use Rolodex anymore, but whatever.
Hey, you still hire an employee just because they're Rolodex. That phrase is used all the time. I used it yesterday. So let me ask you this. It's just for some framing. So you say tech guys, okay? So one of the things that's just coming to my mind now is the other day I was saying email internally, and I was pretty much saying, there's no way to make good out of this situation. I wrote putting lipstick on a pig, okay? And I go, shoot, I can't even say that anymore. Erase. You can't say anything anymore.
You can't say anything.
A tech guy, you cannot say. So I almost think if you're going into business and your name is going to be anywhere, you should have PR from the first moment, because the chances of you screwing up are now 99%. You can't say anything anymore without offending somebody. And my only response was, I didn't know that pigs had an opinion. I was not talking about a person. I was talking about an animal who you should not put lipstick on, and I couldn't write it. And it's crazy.
It's crazy.
But I think it's almost a preemptive strike that if you are in a forward-facing role of anything, you better damn well have your stuff aligned, or you should hire somebody early, because the chances of you saying something wrong are very high these days.
It's totally 100% true. You hit the nail on the head. Hopefully Nail doesn't have an opinion and somebody won't get offended, right? You know, I mean, and it's definitely true. But ideally, out of the gates, you would like a PR person. And once again, I think it goes back to hopefully having conversations with PR firms or people who've used PR. Maybe it's somebody, a like-minded business or whatever, saying, how did this work for you?
Yeah.
And really, that's where messaging and branding and all of these things come in. And that's a huge part of the conversation and setting up that initial strategy. But also looking like, you know, as far as what is the scenario? Is it an event? Well, sure, you have to have PR if it's an event or a festival or things like that, because you need to sell tickets, you need to get the word out, you need to talk about public safety, you need somebody who can handle crisis management.
So quickly hit the perception that any PR is good PR. And if you think about actors, entertainers, I won't go into politics, whatever, some people view that, and it's not, I don't think it's the same.
Well, you might as well ask Paris Hilton and her sex tape, because that was great PR for her. Her whole career was based on one tape that she accidentally made and left in someone's backyard.
But if you're a business,
I think what you're saying is Chip needs to do a sex tape.
Necessarily good PR.
I think we're saying Chip needs to do a sex tape. I think that's the only way that we're going to make it to the top. We're in the top 2%. We need to be in the top 1. So
surprise! This is an intervention. We all had a strategy. You and a sex tape. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that talking about, you know, good PR versus bad PR, I think is also a strong PR partner can take any situation. Hopefully, you know, not any situation, but really figuring out the truth to that situation. And, you know, everybody says spin, but how to make it work and who to have the right conversations with. I think that's critical, and timing is critical as well. Like, was the release of the sex tape, you know, fake or not, or whatever, the timing? Sure. I mean, certainly we you know, orchestrated things like that, but I really once again think that there is some bad PR and people are canceled, but then you can look at a brand who's done the exact same thing and they weren't canceled. Why is that? And often that is the people who are behind the scenes who are working tirelessly to make sure that doesn't happen.
I think unfortunately we're not in a day of vulnerability, and I think we should be. I think that there's something to be said about, my bad, I screwed up, I really didn't mean to say it. You don't see it everywhere. Everyone just doubles down. I was watching Phony Will. She came out, and she did exactly what Trump does. She said, what? You're rude for even talking to me. And she was just doing the exact tech. It's like, yo, you made a mistake.
Right.
You paid a guy.
We
talked about last fall, Bud Light. I mean, we just talked about it. That's the ultimate of just going down the spiral.
But that also has to be great for PR, because by not apologizing, you're just dragging out the length of time. But Bud Light's a great example. Yeah. All they had to do was be like, look, we made a mistake. We misunderstood the market. We're sorry, it won't happen again. But instead, you're still now 2 years down the road, and we're still dragging this out. So the PR company's got to, you know what? For the sake of PR, nobody apologize. Let's keep these guys in business. Let's keep these guys going. But isn't it sad state that that's the case?
It really is, and it's frustrating. And I think, you know, it comes back to really understanding humanity and human behavior is a huge part of what we do, and also dealing with the realistic facts of how people respond to certain situations, and having a PR team that can help you navigate through that, because it's frustrating and sometimes it's discouraging. But obviously, there can be some great opportunities that come out of it as well.
Good for you guys. Good for you guys. What about advice to people coming up that are 20 years old, picking their majors, about to graduate, that want to get into PR? What would you do? And don't say go into accounting, because I know what you're going to say. No. What would you say as far as how to get your foot in the door? Where's the right? What kind of firms to look for? When to start at a big firm versus a small firm? What advice would you give?
The first piece of advice I would give is, if you think you're going to get your master's in PR, don't waste your money. Get into it.
School of hard knocks, baby.
Get your hands dirty. You know, get an internship. Do any of those things where you're getting real life experience. I mean, the biggest detriment to students is the professors telling them they should be making 6 figures right out of the gates. And when I'm actually paying for your relationships, not what you necessarily learned, you know, in 4 years or 2 years past that. I would go with a firm almost like us, a boutique firm, so that you can get as much on-hands exposure.
You get a general understanding of all assets of PR, not just one little part of it. Right. And I think that's so critical. I mean, I would say the same thing for marketing, right? Yeah. Be a generalist. Don't be, you know, just an SEO person or just an advertiser, you know.
Well, I think it's, to Chad's point, internships or volunteering or things like that are really critical as far as PR is concerned, because one, it's board networking, you're meeting people in a field that you want to go into, but also trying to find environments that you're comfortable working in. Once again, like lifestyle PR, everybody's like, oh my God, it's amazing, you're on the red carpet or whatever. And you're like, listen, this is not 9 to 5. And we've had people who really, we sit down and we hire them, like, seriously, like, we're working with restaurants, they're opening at 5. If something happens, you need to be there. We're doing events,
experience and things like that. So.
We have like a New Year's Eve events and festivals, and they don't enjoy it, and that's okay. And then we have some people who thrive off that. So I think it's also really looking at the field that you want to go into, and making sure that you actually.
That's awesome. So we have about 30 seconds left. So how can people find you if they want to?
You can find us, of course, on our website, which is Karen West PR, Caren. West, like the direction in PR. Same with our Instagram, Twitter, and all those good things. So.
And you can look out for them when they leak Trip Job's sex tape.
Yes, indeed.
I heard him early on say sometimes you just have to say no.
Right.
Tell the client no, and I'm hearing no, and no again. So
who's saying we weren't already filming?
What's the budget?
Well, we are going to see the Nick sandwich somewhere, though. It's going to be like 10 pounds of meat in between 2 crusty pieces of bread. So I think there we go. All right. Well, this has been the Marketing Madmen, and thanks so much, Chad and Karen. It's been awesome, and you've been listening on Xtra 106.3. We'll be back next week.
Easy breezy.
Thank you guys so much. That was a lot of fun. We really appreciate it.
As I told you in the elevator, you're going to do all the talking, and I was like, no.